Welcome to the Glorious Beard Podcast. It's a brand new year, and we have a brand new show. And our guest today is Joel Strasser. Joel grew up in a small town in Idaho, one of 8 children, where he sat right in the middle. And that meant learning early how to be noticed without necessarily standing out too much. Men in his family had beards all of his life, and even as he moved into environments where facial hair was not allowed, like the military and a religious university with a strict honor code, he always had a beard in mind. It never went away as an idea, even when it couldn't exist on his face. Eventually, Joel would go on to claim a Guinness World Record, and after that, 17 Guinness World Records since, all centered around his beard. Oh, and he also competed on a show called The Amazing Race, becoming a finalist. So enjoy this episode of The Glorious Beard as we talk to Joel Strasser and find out everything about him. You were, as I understand it, right, you were born in Washington but grew up in Idaho. That's correct, yeah?
Yes,
okay.
That's true.
Cool. So let's go back to the beginning of the Idaho years. What kind of things can you tell me about that you remember about growing up back then? Maybe there were moments that really set the tone for your life at that time.
So growing up in Idaho, I was actually part of a big family. I'm one of 8 kids, and I'm right in the middle. And I think that kind of made me an attention seeker. I think that that's kind of spawned that because I was always trying to find my place, and hey, look at me, when I was a kid. And I guess I never really outgrew that. So I think that's why I like to break world records. I think that's why I like going on TV. It's my appetite for attention, I guess. But growing up in Idaho's not a big place, not a lot of people. It's starting to get that way now, but they're a small town. Not even back then when I was a kid, everybody knew everybody, and gosh, I've lived all over the place since then. As I've grown up, I've lived all over in different states, different parts of the country, and then I came back to here where I grew up, and it's different. It's so big now. Like by my standards, it's pretty big. The area of Southwest Idaho has grown so much. So yeah, a lot of people, you don't know anybody anymore. The town I live in right now, this is the town where we used to come to go shooting when I was a kid, because there was nothing here, and it was a great place to go shooting. Now there's so many neighborhoods here. There's so many people here. It's not the same as it used to be.
It's funny how things like that can change, because a lot like you, I grew up in a very small town in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. My father was chief of police. My mother was the bail bondsman. And everybody knew everybody, especially, it was kind of like Mayberry, everybody knew my dad, everybody knew my family. So I get where you're coming from there. And sometimes I do go back. You visit the cemetery, or, you go and see a friend close by, whatever, and I can definitely relate with that. Growing up, the peers in your life, your uncle, your father had beards at different times, as was the tradition back in the early 80s. I can safely say you and I are relatively close in age from the notes that I got. The 70s beard was still trying to hang on. The 80s was trying to phase it out. But you had people in your life that had beards. What do you remember about those beards? And can you tell me if you remember any of your thoughts about it? Like when you would look at those people, what would you think about when you saw their beards?
I don't know that I put it in words when I was young, but it always just felt like a man was supposed to have a beard, right? And that was always, I think that was just ingrained in me somehow, maybe just because the people I looked up to had beards. I had multiple uncles with beards. My dad had a beard on and off. And it was just like a manly thing about it, And I always thought that I would grow a beard. I mean, I had a cousin who grew a beard when he was young. At least, he was like still a teenager, and I thought that was so cool. And I was like, man, I'm going to do that. But then I joined the Army, and you can't have a beard in the Army. I also went to at the same time, kind of as I was finishing up in the Army. I went to a private university that had no facial hair at the university either. So even if I wasn't on duty in the Army, I still couldn't have my beard. And so it wasn't until after I graduated and got out of the Army that I was like, okay, now I'm having a beard from now on, and I'm not looking back. So, and I haven't, but I used to keep it really short. I used to keep it nice and trimmed up for quite a while, because that's what my wife prefers, and that's. But I guess at a certain point, I was just like, I want it to be long. I want to let it go, let it let it be what it wants to be. So I did get some pushback from my wife a little bit when I started growing it longer, when I started letting it go. And she she would make fun of it, or she would just, poke fun. I mean, she wasn't being mean or anything, but she was just telling me that she wished it would be shorter and trimmed up. But then when I started breaking world records with my beard, we started getting invited places. And she could go on trips, thanks to the beard. We went on an Italian TV show and did a record there. Went to Live with Kelly and Ryan in New York City, did a record there. We've gone, where else have we gone? I feel like we've gone other places too, but either way, she, at one point she was like, okay, I get it. You're good. Like, I'm not gonna make fun of it anymore. I'm not gonna tell you to trim it anymore. And I think she also accepted that, like, this is just really me,
You worked in a video store, which I think is amazing. And I can remember as a child, every single weekend, my mother would take us to the video store. I was allowed to rent a Nintendo game, the cartridge, and we'd get a movie for the weekend, And this is like the homegrown, hometown video stores type stuff. And I also participated in like video game tournaments in the video store, Super Mario and all that. And I know that there are a lot of quirky characters that come into video stores. I know you've got a lot of stories about that. So tell me about those days at the rental store, and maybe some of the more kind of outlandish or amazing things that you might remember from that.
Those were good days. I loved that job. I mean, my first job, I milked cows at a dairy, and that was hard work. And as soon as I was old enough to work at a store, like, I was done with the dairy. I did the dairy for a couple of years, and I'm glad I did it, but I was done with it, And there was a video rental store, a local one that well known in this area. Of course, it's long gone now. I loved working there, and I was right in my element. I loved getting to know the actors that are in movies and becoming more and more of an expert on movies. I'm still kind of an expert on 90s movies and before that. But yeah, I kind of when people returned videos, of course, back in those days, you had to rewind the videos. We had a whole bank of rewinders because people didn't rewind them. And so you could just tell by looking at a video if it had been rewinded, and then pop it in the rewinder. And then once we got all the videos checked back in, I developed this system of lining up the VHS tapes on the counter and then kind of doing this thing where I'd grab them and then hold them down low and tuck them all the way up under my chin. Didn't have a beard then. But I would hold the stack of videos with my chin all the way down to, I don't know how many I could get, but I was always trying to push the envelope and see how many I could get in my hand. They were already alphabetized, and then I'd go over to the shelf and start putting them back one by one. And it was kind of a game for me to see, like, kind of a competition between me and the other people that worked there. Like, how big of a stack could I carry to go put the videos back? Man, that's just bringing back some awesome memories. But we also did have, you had different crowds that came into the video store. On weekend nights, it was kids that I knew I'd see a lot of kids from high school, a lot of people I knew in there. But every Tuesday morning was when the new titles came out for rent. And there was always a small handful of people who would be waiting for us to open on Tuesday mornings. And as soon as the doors open, they would come in and go and rent all of the new titles, even the obscure ones. I kind of thought that was a little bit weird, but I mean, that's their hobby, so whatever. But we had a rental return box out in the parking lot of this video store where you could drive up and just drop the videos into the box. And one day me and a coworker had this bright idea that I was going to hide inside this box and scare people. And so cars come up to return their videos. And what I thought would be funny is if I just pushed the video back out after they put them in there. And it made people got so confused by it. They never, to what I can determine, nobody ever thought there was a person in there. They just thought there was something wrong with the box. And they would go and be like, your box ejected the video back out. And they'd tell my coworkers there. My coworkers would try not to laugh. And then they'd tell me the stories. Or people would peer into the little box like, what's in there? But they couldn't see me. That was so fun. I don't think I would have lasted long if my boss would have known that I was doing that, but I didn't do it when the boss was there.
Thank you for listening to the Glorious Beard podcast. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and a whole bunch of other places by searching The Glorious Beard. Today's episode is sponsored by Men Matter & Co. Because confidence starts with care, because men matter. When men feel good, they thrive, and that's great for everyone. From beard care to mental wellness, it's all about self-respect, and every man deserves to feel his best. Men Matter & Co. have some great products designed to help you look the part and feel confident in whatever you're doing. And the team have carefully crafted a selection of beard balms and oils to make your beard stand out and give you the assurance that when you look good, you can meet the challenges that you face with confidence. Remember, a portion of every purchase at menmatterandco.com goes to men's mental health charities. That's why the Glorious Beard is proud to join with Men Matter to give you 15% off of your entire purchase using our promo code GLORIOUSPOD at checkout. That's 15% off for your entire purchase at checkout at menmatterandco.com using the promo code GLORIOUSPOD. Now let's get back into our discussion with Joel Strasser, who's about to tell us about his obsession with the Guinness Book of World Records at an early age.
I have this book right over here. This is an early 80s edition of the Guinness World Record book. This one is 84. And I would check this out from the library at the elementary school. Like I was in elementary school in, I guess, the mid to late 80s. And I would check this thing out and I would look through it and look at the pictures. And I'd just be like, man, how awesome would it be to be in that book one day? And I just look at these people in here that did just incredible things. Here's a guy swallowing a bunch of swords. And I'd be like, yeah. But it was kind of a dream, you know? It wasn't something that I really believed I would do back then. And I kind of forgot about it. But then later on, when I got older, I was just like, you know what? Like that dream kind of came back. Like it never really left. I just kind of remembered it. And I was like, I could find a way to get in that book. I could figure something out. And so it just kept growing. And then eventually it spawned into the records that I broke later. But going back to high school, getting out of high school, graduating high school, I had some people to look up to who had been in the military. My older brother had joined the Army. My dad served in the Air Force. I had a couple uncles that served in the Marines, Army, and my grandpas both served in the Air Force and Army. They served in Vietnam, in World War II, and the Korean War. So I guess you could say there's like a heritage in my family of military service. And I am not like the gung-ho type. Like I didn't want to be like an infantryman or anything like that. That wasn't my purpose. It was more just I wanted to pay for college, and I didn't have a plan to pay for college. And I thought the military would be a good way to do that because it'd been such a good thing with my family. So I joined the military police corps because I used to have I thought I wanted to be a police officer when I was getting out of high school. I thought that's what I would do. And that the military police corps would be the way to do it. So I joined the Idaho Army National Guard to pay for college. And at the time, this was the late 90s, they said, oh, yeah, that you don't get deployed. You just do one weekend a month. You know, you just, you do your 1 weekend a month, you do your 2 weeks every summer, and then that's that. And it pays for college. You get some extra money on the side, and you get to serve the country on the weekend, you know? And I'm like, cool, works for me. And then, September 11th rolls around, and the National Guard does get deployed. And so, of course, we all did. And my brigade first got deployed right here in Idaho. Like, they put my brigade on security at the air base and at the airport and at different places like that. But I was finishing up college. Right after high school, I actually went and served a mission for my church. And I had spent some time in Belgium and in France. And as soon as I got back, I was going to college, and they started that deployment, but they told me I didn't have to do it because they didn't need everybody, and they said you can stay in college. So I did. But then as soon as that first deployment ended, I still wasn't done with college yet. And then the second deployment came where my whole brigade was going to go to Iraq, and there was no getting out of that one. Mm-hmm. So we all went to Iraq. We spent 18 months. Well, most of the time was in Iraq, a little bit in Kuwait. And at the very beginning, we spent some time in Texas and New Mexico. But that was a really interesting experience for me because the timing at the time, I didn't like the timing. I had just gotten married. I'd been married for only a couple of months. I only had like a semester and a half left of college. I wanted to finish that. And I was just like, this timing sucks. So I wasn't particularly pleased with the deployment's timing when it happened. And I didn't have the best attitude at the beginning of that deployment. But as those 18 months kind of went out or whatever, I started to realize, like, no, there's probably never going to be good timing, first of all, to go get deployed if it wasn't part of your plan. And I'm here for a reason, and I'm going to figure out what that reason is, and I'm going to make the best of this. And once my attitude kind of shifted, I never regretted being deployed. I'm glad I did that. I served with, honor and distinction or whatever. And I'm super glad that I had the opportunity to do it. I never would trade away that opportunity to have served.
When you were deployed, did your, what's the word I should use? Your zeal for outdoing other people or breaking records or whatever, did that carry with you in deployment? How did that go for you?
Not really. When I was in the Army, when I was in the military police, I mean, my personality was still there, but I spent a lot of time in the shadows, I think. I think I wanted to blend in. That was a part of my life where I just wanted to not stand out. I learned in basic training that standing out isn't what you want to do. It'll get you in a lot of trouble. And I think whenever I put on the uniform, I was mostly trying to blend in, but I would still have fun, and I would still get in trouble sometimes because of that. But while deployed, I was kind of keeping my head down and just trying to do what we needed to do and do it as best I could. And get home in one piece. I think that was my main focus during that deployment.
Yeah, I can see that. I've got friends who were there with you around that time, and we talk about those times gently. And then later on, my nephew would go to serve in Afghanistan, and he pretty much said the same thing that you did. Keep your head down, don't stand out, do your job, serve your country, get home. Yeah. So you go on to Boise State, and there's I've never heard of this. There was a beard ban in your university.
Oh, so to clarify, Boise State was later. I got my master's degree from Boise State just like 5 years ago.
Okay.
I went to BYU, Idaho, when I got my undergraduate degree.
Brigham Young. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. So BYU, Idaho, no beards. You can have a mustache, but back in the early 2000s, having a mustache was really weird. Like, they were not cool at all. And you would see like one guy every once in a while on campus with a mustache, like, whoa, he's bold, But I imagine there today, a lot of people have mustaches, but still no beards, still no. That's still a thing. They've loosened up some of the rules. Like, I feel like I heard that BYU allows shorts now, which over a long time you couldn't wear shorts on campus, but I think they do. I don't know, but I loved my time at BYU, Idaho. It was awesome. But the beard was not part of that whatsoever.
Just to explain that for the listener who may not know the standards of Brigham Young, the Mormons, and that kind of culture, just explain why there was a beard ban.
I don't know all the reasons for the beard, for the no facial hair on campus, but BYU, Idaho, there's a BYU, Hawaii. They all have an honor code, and you basically have to agree to it to go there. So you're not getting into anything you didn't know. It's not like you show up and they're like, ha, no shorts, no facial hair. There's a curfew. Like everybody knows those things going in. And I, at the time, I hadn't even had a beard yet, really. Like, I had sometimes had some whiskers here and there, but my beard hadn't really begun to flourish yet anyway. So I didn't really mind not being able to grow out a beard at BYU, Idaho. And there's, part of that is no alcohol either. Those are all the little parts of the honor code. You have to get an endorsement from your local ecclesiastical leader before they accept you. And it's nothing big. It's basically just you meet with your bishop and you talk to them, and you say, yeah, I agree to follow the rules. I agree to be honorable or whatever. And that's that. So it's funny because I realized that some of those things sound a little bit strange to people who aren't part of the culture. But to everybody, all the students on the campus, it's just normal. Just like I don't feel like there's a lot of people on the campus that are like, hey, we should be able to have a beard or anything like that, because everybody's just kind of like, yeah, I knew what I was getting into. I'm fine with it. You
have an obsession with Pepsi. And
I sure do.
I want to tell you that I fully sympathize and I fully understand your obsession. My mother growing up had everything Coca-Cola that you could imagine. Display cases, continuous, cases of Coca-Cola in the kitchen. She would drink probably 8 cans a day at the least. The gear, the shirts, the little ceramic bears, everything. And everybody kind of collects something. We all collect something, but not to the extent that it takes over an entire room. I have a former mechanic. His whole mechanic shop was decked out in M&M's stuff because people found out he liked M&M's. They would bring him M&M related material, and then pretty soon the whole shop. I myself probably own about 1,200 packs of playing cards because I collect the playing cards. I'm not a magician. I'm not I love playing cards. I collect them. So to say all that, people may not understand how a person can become so what they would call obsessed with something. I call it a passion. How did your passion for Pepsi start and then grow over time?
When I was a little kid, I would go to my grandparents' house, and they always had Pepsi in the fridge. And it was kind of like a tradition to go in, give my grandma a hug, and then get a Pepsi out of the fridge. Like, that's just how it worked. And I looked forward to it. Like, when I got to her house, and she never let me down. She always had the Pepsi in there. Her and my grandpa had it available. So I think just from a really young age, I just acquired that love because I associated it with a good, I get to see my grandma, I get to see my grandpa, and I'm getting a Pepsi, and it just all kind of came together, and I loved it. And, I don't think I ever tasted or even drank a Coke until much later. And when I did, I was just like, this isn't as good. This is like what it's like, it's trying to be like Pepsi, but it failed. Like, I remember thinking that when I was a little kid. And so I just loved it. And I didn't start collecting Pepsi things till I got a little bit older, but I guess I just loved it so much that I started, every time I could get my hands on something new to add to my Pepsi collection, I did. And then, like you were talking about, once people know you collect something, then they give it to you. Then they're like, when they see something, they get it for you. And that's awesome. This past Father's Day recently, my kids got me a bunch of Pepsi stuff. Right up, if you're watching on the video, right up here behind me, and this is a throwback a little bit, but in 2000, was it 2001 when Star Wars Episode 1 came out? They did this thing with a different can for every character, and there were all these cans. You got, and the cans came out before the movie came out, so you see all these characters, and you're like, oh, cool, and people started to collect them. But for Father's Day, I got this whole set of all of the cans of Episode 1 of Star Wars. And I remember, so I was in basic training when that was coming out, when the movie came out and leading up to it. And I remember I got a weekend pass during basic training, and I got a can of Pepsi that had Darth Maul on it. And I'm like, this guy looks awesome. Who is this guy? This is so cool. And somebody else has a can with Jar Jar Binks on it. And they're like, well, look at this guy. He's probably the next Chewbacca, And so it was, I don't know, it was cool back then. And I didn't think about hanging on to him, but somebody saved the whole set, and my kids got it for me. So I'm pretty excited about that.
It's really sad to me that Darth Maul did look so awesome, but he died in such a silly and fast way, I don't know how big of a Star Wars fan that you are, but that's one thing that has always irked me, even to this day.
Oh, yeah.
He was supposed to be so amazing and so powerful and all, and then he dies in the way that he did. It was a shame.
I mean, I like Star Wars as much as the next guy, and I completely agree with you on that. And I feel like in later years they tried to find ways to bring him back because he never really got to do anything, really. Like, he was really mysterious. You didn't know anything about him, really, and then he's gone.
They say that his beard was so long they used it as a jump rope. Meet the king of whiskers, Hans Langseth, holder of the Guinness World Record for longest beard ever recorded. Born in Norway in 1846, Hans began growing his beard at age 19 and didn't stop growing it until he died in 1927. In 1870, Hans and his wife moved to Iowa, where they then raised 6 children. And believe it or not, Hans was a farmer. I mean, imagine how tough it was to keep that beard out of the way as it grew. Once it gets between 4 and 5 feet, facial hair actually begins to die. And when Hans reached this marker, he allegedly tangled his beard into something much like a dreadlock. But it gets even crazier. Eventually, it got so long that he wrapped it around a corn cob, which he would then stuff into a bag on his neck. Later on in life, he eventually joined the circus, but sadly, so many people pulled on it to see if it was real that he ended up quitting. At the time of his death, his beard stretched to an incredible 17 feet and 6 inches, and his family followed his wishes, cutting it off after his passing. They then kept it for 4 decades before eventually donating it to the Smithsonian Institute. If you want more weird and wild and whiskered stories, be sure to follow us on our Instagram at The Glorious Beard. All right, so younger days, then you go into the Army, you're at Brigham Young. All of these times, you're not allowed to have a beard or you don't have a beard. But finally, the day comes. January 30th, 2017. Was it a kitchen sink moment, like where you're just standing there and you're like, this is the time is now? Or what really was it that got you in that mindset that you were going to grow a beard, and how did you go about it?
So, I actually had a beard for a while leading up to that date, but that was the date where I decided I'm going to cut it off completely. I'm going to shave it completely, and then I'm never going to cut it off again, basically. I mean, I don't know. It was basically starting in like around 2006 or 7 is when I had graduated from college, and then I got out of the National Guard in somewhere in 2007. And for the next like 10 years, I had a short beard. But January 1st, 2017, I cut it completely off. I shaved it completely bare. And then I said, I want to grow a beard. And this is the way to do it. I'll go from January 1st to December 31st. So I did, and never trimmed it, nothing like that. And at the end of the year, it was nice. I mean, it looked pretty good, I thought. And that's when I was like, now hang on a sec. I know that there's this record for most toothpicks in a beard. What if I just tried it? Like, what if I just saw how close I could do? And I decided to make a YouTube video where I just attempted it. And I got to say that the guy who held the toothpick in a beard record before me, his beard was huge. I'm talking so majestic, so huge. It looked like a lion's mane. His name is Jeff Langham, and his beard is incredible. It goes out really far on the sides, and it's just big. So when I saw that he held the record for most toothpicks in a beard, I was like, well, I could never do that. There's no way. Look at that beard. I mean, compared to that guy, I have a goatee. But I tried it, and I found out that I kind of had a knack for it. And I found out that, wait a minute, it's not just sticking toothpicks in the beard. You got to make something. You got to create a structure. And then once you do that, you can build on it, and the structure will hold the rest of the toothpicks that you build. And I found out, like, well, there's kind of a thing to this. And I was like, you know what? Even with my small beard, in comparison, I can break this record. And so I broke the record unofficially. And then I was like, well, okay, I've done it. Now how do I make this a Guinness thing? And that's when I found out that breaking the record is the easy part. Making it Guinness official, that's where it becomes kind of difficult, because they don't just say like, oh yeah, you hold the record now. Good job. You got to prove it. And you got to prove it like many ways. Like there's a lot of steps and a lot of work to prove that you broke the record. And but I wasn't deterred by that. I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how this works. I'm going to work through this. It's funny because I've had a lot of people tell me they want to break a record and ask me how it's done. And I start telling them, okay, so once you know you can do it, here's how you navigate the Guinness part. And then they kind of lose interest. Like, and I'm like, come on. I mean, you did the hard part. Now do this hard part. But after I figured out the process, like I broke that first record, that toothpick record, and I didn't know that I would break any more records. I thought that was it. It's like, cool. I hold a Guinness World Record. This is amazing. And then one day, not too long after that, the Guinness people contacted me and they're like, hey, we're doing photo shoots for the upcoming book. And we'd like to come out to your town and do a photo shoot for the 2020 book. So this was like early in 2019 that they contacted me. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. And they actually sent out a crew from England, like, because that's where they're headquartered. There was like, these are a bunch of British guys came out to my house, and I recreated the toothpick in a beard record, and they made a whole video of it. And it was funny because it takes a few hours to do that, and they had all their cameras set up. And like halfway through the record, it's just like a lull. Now they're waiting for me to finish so that they can start taking a bunch of photos afterwards. And I had a football, and like these guys go out in the street and they start throwing the football back and forth, but they didn't really know how to throw a football. They were throwing a football like a tennis ball or something. Like it was just funny to watch. It was like you could tell none of them had ever thrown a football before. But anyhow, once I finished filling my beard up with the toothpicks, and they took all the photos, they were like, so what's next? What are you going to do next? And I'm like, you mean I can break more than one record? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, what other beard records are there? And I hadn't even looked into that. I never thought about it. And the next one was straws. And so I broke the most straws in a beard record. And then I'm just like, dude, if it can go in a beard, I'm doing it. I'm going to break that record. I'm going to break as many as I can. So I just started going from there. I break a couple a year, and it's fun.
And now you're up to at least 17.
Yep. In fact, if for the video over here is where all my record certificates are on the wall, and then the books that I've appeared in, 6 editions of the Guinness World Record book so far. And I want to see how many I can get in. I mean, once you've been in a couple, like keep it going as long as you can, right?
Yeah, definitely. I have no idea what it takes to, number one, apply for a competition show, to get through all the things for the competition show, but then you almost won the thing. Tell us, and I'm sure you've done a bunch of interviews about the Amazing Race and this and that and everything else. What I'm more interested in is maybe the things that didn't make it to air and how you were able to influence other people, because you have a growth mindset. You didn't always. At a time, you said, oh, I can't break that record. I can't do that. But now these days, you believe you can do anything. And that's proven. 17 world records, all of these things, the Amazing Race. How do you make that transformation? I mean, was it the first record that set it off? Or how do you make that transformation from looking at something and saying, well, I don't know, to almost winning the Amazing Race? And how was that along the way?
I think that I had to overcome negativity. I think that was one of the biggest things that had to happen for me. I used to really struggle with negativity a lot. I would complain a lot. I would gripe. I would talk about stuff that's way outside of my control and gripe about it. And at a certain point, I realized that none of that's going to do me any good, but it is going to hurt me if I keep doing it. And I realized that there are things that are in my control. That's where I should focus. But also, looking at things negatively doesn't fix anything, but it does make everything worse. And I really started to believe that. Like that, I really wanted to make that part of who I am. And once I focused on that a lot, that's when it started removing barriers for me. That, along with, and I think it's related to it, but having a growth mindset means don't look at something and say the reasons you can't do it, but look at something and say, here's how I could figure this out. Here's how I could do this. And you start to realize that you're only limited by yourself. Like no one else is stopping you from doing anything. You start to realize that anybody who's successful, anybody that you look up to as a hero or whatever, that didn't just happen to them. They worked really hard to make that happen. They overcame a lot of challenges. They overcame a lot of failures. They kept moving forward when things were tough. Figuring that out, I mean, one of my favorite examples of that is Chuck Norris. I mean, who doesn't love Chuck Norris? And Chuck Norris, when he started in martial arts, he sucked at it. He was not naturally good at it. He lost tournaments. He like people asked him why he was still doing it when he kept losing. And when he first tested for his black belt, he failed. But he kept moving forward. He kept believing he could do it, and he kept working at it. And then he became world karate champion like 8 or 9 years in a row, and then he got into movies, and it just goes from there. But I love that example. So when it comes to The Amazing Race, getting onto the show, I had applied I like Survivor also, and I had applied for Survivor a couple of times, but never heard back. And so, and I submitted what I thought was a really good application video for Survivor. And I was like, oh, I'll be hearing from Jeff in no time, but nothing. And by the way, the same people who cast Survivor cast Amazing Race. That has the same exact casting team. But when I was in Iraq, we had the Armed Forces Network that we could tune into, and it had The Amazing Race on there. And my buddy Smythe, who was my teammate on The Amazing Race, we were in the same platoon. And we got deployed together. However, he got injured toward the start of the deployment, and he got sent back home. And so now we're not in the same, we're not together in this deployment. And that kind of sucked. But I was watching The Amazing Race as often as I could when I was in Iraq. And unbeknownst to me, he was watching it at home, and we were both dreaming of being on the show. Now this is like 2005, right? So this is like pretty early in the show. The show had been around for a couple of years at that point, but I was like, dude, I could kick butt on this show. It'd be so cool. And I'm thinking about like making an application video in Iraq. Like, how cool would that be if I could find the time to put something together? And I'm trying to like get somebody who's in my platoon, who's still with me, who didn't ditch me when he got injured, to make an application video with me, and we would apply for the show. But it never really like fit or felt good or anything or went anywhere. But when I get home, I'm talking to Smythe, and we both had this same idea, like, dude, we should totally do this. And then we never did. And so it's like 2006 now, and we didn't apply. We talked about it, we dreamed about it, and that's as far as it went. And then I got jobs in other parts of the country. I moved to Wyoming, I moved to Georgia, I moved to Washington. So I don't live in the same place as Smythe now. He's here in Idaho. And then finally in 2021, I think, 2021, I moved back to Idaho, and now I live in the same place as Smythe again. And we've always been friends. We've always stayed in touch. And we start talking about Amazing Race again. And we're like, dude, we should totally do this. And at that point, like, the question comes up, like, are we too old? Like, we're in our 40s now. And I'm like, nah, we can do it. We can do it. And so we're making this plan. Like, we're gonna let's make an application video. Like, we even looked up online, like, tips for application videos and stuff like that. And then I go home and I kind of start to forget about it. But like a couple days later, Smythe calls me up and he's like, okay, I'm coming over. We're making the video. And I'm like, oh, we're doing this. And he's like, well, yeah. He comes over. We slap together a application video. We submit it. And I think we're never going to hear back because I never heard back on Survivor. So I just figured that's what will happen. And a month later, like a whole month passes. I've pretty much forgotten about it at this point. I'm not like checking my emails, hoping to hear back or anything. And we both got a text from a casting producer, and it was just like the coolest thing ever. Like, no way. They actually contacted us back. This is crazy. And in our minds now, we're on the show, like just hearing back. What we didn't know is that they're contacting hundreds of teams, and they're going to whittle it down over the course of a few months. But as soon as we hear back, we're like, dude, this is happening. And then it became just like the world's biggest job interview. Like, we would meet in web meetings with the casting people, and they'd give us tasks to do. They'd give us paperwork to fill out, different things to go do, doctor's visits. And as it goes on, we start to realize, like, oh, all of this stuff is like hurdles to cross. And we decided to treat it from the very beginning, treat it like we're already on the race. So if they say, hey, by next week, can you fill out this paperwork? We'd have it done the next day. And if, hey, by this time, go do this, we do it right away, drop everything and get that thing done. And then we get to the point where we start to realize we're like finalists now. They send us down to Los Angeles to meet in person, and like the host of the show is there, Phil. The creators of the show are there. The CBS executives are there, and we're like in person interviewing now. And we're down to like the final hurdles to get onto the show. And one thing that happened in that process that's really kind of silly, we we knew we were on deck. We're the next team that's going to go in to meet with this intimidating group of CBS people, you know? And so to calm our nerves, we like started singing, and we're not singers, but we were singing anyway. Just like, we're just kind of hyped up, you know? And as we're singing this song, we start to harmonize without even trying. Like Smythe's singing one part and I'm singing the other part. We're like, whoa, that was cool. We get into, and then the team that was in before us, Joe and Ian, they made it onto our season. Joe and Ian come out of their little interview with all these executives, and the main casting producer is just like, way to go, guys. He gives them a big hug. He's like, you crushed it. You did so good. And we're just like, okay, cool. Let's do the same thing. So then we go in, and it's this big room of producers and intimidating people, but we're just like being ourselves, you know? And one of the creators of the show, Elise, she says, have you learned anything about each other during this casting process that you didn't know before? And we're like, well, 5 minutes ago, we found out we can harmonize. And as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, I'm like, come back. Because they were like, show us. And we're like, well, we're not really singers. And then I realized this is a moment where you better just do it, because if you say no, that's it. It's over. And so I was like, okay, but we're not singers. So we just sing the same song, and I sing one part of the harmony. It was 8 days a week by the Beatles, and Smythe sings the other part. And then they were like, wow, that, like, Phil was like, that's pretty good. And Elise is like, maybe we'll cast for The Voice. So I'm glad that you guys sang that. And it was just funny. And it was us being spontaneous, but it totally made a difference. I think there was our ability to just be ourselves, even under pressure. I think they also really liked our look. They liked my big beard and his big mustache. All of those little things combined. Well, and then we come out from the meeting or the interview or whatever, and that same casting producer, I'm expecting a big hug and you nailed it. And he's just like, great job. And we just like leave. We're like, oh, we're like, okay, well, that didn't work. And so at that point, we thought we didn't make it. We thought, well, we saw the reception that Joe and Ian got, and now we got to see ours, and we're just like, okay, well, it was fun. And then a week later, we find out we're on the show. So the process of casting is crazy and fun. It is a lot of fun.
Joel, we got just a few minutes left, and one thing that I always like to do is ask a certain question, and it's going to go back to something that you said at the very beginning. When we're children and we're looking at the peers in our life, we can see the peers in our life that have beards and facial hair as being masculine. There's this sense of masculinity about being a man, but I'm pretty sure that you agree with me that we see it the same way. That's not what makes a man masculine. You're a husband, a family man, a patriot, all of these things. What does your beard mean to you, and what is masculinity really?
I'm going the same direction I feel like you're going with this. Yes, I always thought, and beards are cool, by the way, but I think they're more cool than masculine, because anybody can grow a beard. And it's not, the beard is a really awesome accessory, and I think it's a really important part of your personality. But what you choose to do with your life, how you choose to live your life, that's like the true measure of a man to me. How do you treat your family? How do you treat your wife? How do you treat your kids? What are your priorities in your life? What do you put things in front of your family, or put things in front of, I don't know, how do you spend your spare time? What stacks up and what's important to you? All of those things. And I don't think it's something that I don't think it's something that you can maybe palpably describe. It's more just like how everything comes together. To me, the most masculine thing that somebody can do is be a good father. The most honorable masculine thing somebody can do is be a good husband. Like those things are at the top of the list. It's so hard to describe, because you see so many people that fall short. You see so many people, and you try to learn from those people, by the way. Also, you're not only learning from the successful people. I think it's really important to be able to learn from people who fail also. And if you can learn from their failures, that's even better than learning from your own failure, maybe. But I want to be somebody that my kids look up to. I want to be somebody that my grandkids look up to when I get there. And by the grayness of my beard, I feel like I'm getting closer all the time to that. I think that being there for your friends, being there for other people, stepping up when it's not easy, those are all the most important things that you could do in your life.
My guest today on The Glorious Beard is Joel Strasser, an American content creator, multi-time world record holder, best known for his beard-related achievements, and he's just an all-around good guy. If you'd like to learn more about Joel and follow him, you can find him on Instagram at Joel Nert. That's JoelNert, where he shares his life, his records, his family moments, and more. Our production director at JXB Media is Bob McCoy. Our executive producer is Joseph Kay. Associate producers include Damian Miller and Sabrina Dene. Our production assistant for today's episode was Kaylin Graff. Our short story about Hans Langseth was written by Carly Pearson. You should check out our social media because it's pretty awesome and the team there makes a lot of great things. You can find their excellent work on our Instagram, our YouTube, and more by searching The Glorious Beard. The Glorious Beard is a production of JXB Media, a subsidiary of Top Secret Television Productions. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, follow, and do whatever other fun things that your podcast platform allows you to do to help us out. And as always, you can find us online at thegloriousbeard.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.